Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos, your new daily podcast for Mile High Sports, brought to you Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. I'm your host, Bree Maestas, with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. We'll be with you Monday through Friday. We had a great episode yesterday. Looking forward to today's. Got a lot of news to cover, but first, you can find all of Zach and Joey's excellent work on milehighsports.com. And you can catch all of our previous episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you get your
Wherever
podcasts.
you listen to podcasts.
Wherever you listen to podcasts. Yeah. Thank you for the
All the
assist there.
places.
All of the places. If you're watching over on Twitter, however, you're going to need to hop on over to the YouTube stream over on Mile High Sports YouTube page so you can get your questions and comments highlighted so we can interact with you during the show. And so you can let us know exactly how you feel about the comments that we're about to make this evening. Yeah, guys, how are you? Coffee. How are you guys doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Happy Tuesday. Beat Joey to the punch for the first time ever. LTV uprising. Yeah, hanging out, enjoying. Yeah, just loving our new daily schedule. Love getting to do this more frequently and in our beautiful new studio, no less.
Yeah, I'm doing really good as well. Excited to be here. Look forward to it with the 5 days a week, brand new. I'm still working through some adjustments, but it's fun. I really enjoy being able to talk this much Broncos, like dream stuff going on. I will say this podcast studio is extremely hot, always.
It's a hot box. There's no ventilation. We close the door and it just gets progressively hotter as the show goes on.
We wrote in our contracts that we had to shower daily. You know, you had to do the whole taking care of yourself so we can sit this close to each other and have a good time doing so.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I wish we were a little more spread out.
I honestly wish I had more personal space. I'm like a cat. Please do not
We need
approach.
to get a fan.
Yeah, a fan would be nice. Get picked up by the mics a little bit, but I digress. It's been an eventful week already. We're coming up on cuts, but we should probably talk to the performances of the rookies from the preseason game, at least through the first two preseason games. So the Broncos just had a game on Saturday against the Bills, if you can even call it that. I think a lot of Broncos country was frustrated with the performances, and it's almost as if Hackett had less praise for the rookies this go around. Zach, how do you feel about just that in general? Like, I know you released an article basically about the rookie performances. How did you feel about Hackett's kind of lack of positive reinforcement this time?
Yeah, I think it's fine and it's to be expected. I think, he did say some really positive things about Montrell Washington. I know we'll get into that in a bit. And I think he had valid critiques for Nick Bonitto that didn't go too harsh or unnecessary. He said he played like a rookie. He made some bad mistakes. Veteran quarterback was able to draw him off sides. And, I think you can live with that. I actually kind of liked seeing it from Hackett. And then you saw it again during Monday's presser where you had Hackett kind of say like, that performance does not represent who we are. I'm sorry for that. I kind of did the same thing after the game. Not that we're sorry for our poor performance, but hey, some of these guys didn't step up. They didn't play well. And I think it was good to see, I don't know, strict not the right word, but like the tough side of Hackett, if you even want to call it that, just the like not always happy-go-lucky thing, that when things go bad, he's willing to I don't know, be a little more critical, and I thought that was a positive.
A little more multifaceted there. Joey, what did you take from Hackett's statements following Saturday's game?
I thought that like not a lot of praise was kind of deserved. I will get into it more, but
yeah, I agree.
I didn't think that anyone had standout performance for him to just be. Well, there was Montrell Washington played. Yeah, there was some that deserved a little praise, but for the most part, like who are we? Who would you go up there and praise? Like that's kind of the thing. They did look like rookies. So that's just, I don't know. I don't really have that bold of a take on the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll jump right into it after that then and grade the rookies from their performances on Saturday and see how they stack up to our grades last week. I know we did a similar episode to recap the game, and I think it's just I think it's important to cover. So we'll start off with rookie Nick Bonitto, and I want to hear from Joey. Let's go with you first. How'd you feel about him?
Okay, I thought this game was rough for Nick Bonitto. I really did. We saw. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about it. What Nick Bonitto isn't the perfect player, right? Like he's always, I think, going to be more of a pass rusher, more of a play in space type of guy than he is going to line up in a defensive front and be tough, like run stuffing defensive guy. Like, I don't think that's ever going to be his game. Now, what we saw was him having to play that role this last game, and it was issues, right? It was issues. I didn't think he was very good against the run at all. Zach said earlier, he was drew off sides. We did kind of see every once in a while the bendiness and the quickness that we love to see out of Nick Bonitto. But for the most part, you can't give him a good grade for it just because I didn't think his performance was that good overall. So I gave him a D+.
Wow.
Yeah, I am a little, I think, more positive here than you. Just a note out on my grades. I was struggling with how to frame it because it's like based on what I've seen in camp and seen in the preseason game, it's a little disappointing. But I think it's almost fair, at least for me personally. I wanted to grade it based off what my pre-draft expectations were, because I think that's a better barometer of how are these players doing, you know, since they were drafted. And looking at Nick Bonitto, you know, I had higher expectations of him than what we saw against the Bills. Again, he was one-dimensional and everything, but I think seeing him jump off sides the way he did, and then just overall not be effective whatsoever, like he was shut out of the box score entirely.
Right.
It doesn't register like he played, and he played like nearly 30 snaps.
He played a lot.
I think he saw some pressures. I don't know if PFF credit, like that doesn't show up in an old style box score. I don't know if PFF credited him with any, but I saw him get pocket push a couple times, which is what saves it for me from dropping into a D. You know, maybe I am being too generous there, but I feel like it was a C- performance. I thought it was disappointing, but I didn't think it was a bad showing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just to get a better understanding of like the grading scale, I guess?
Or for me, you can grade it however you want. I'm not trying to impose that on you.
No, for sure. What would, just out of curiosity, an F performance look like?
I mean, I think it depends on where the players draft. I would say an F is like,
because I'm not saying Nick Bonitto deserves an F. That's not what I'm saying. But like, I guess
I think
it's hard for
to
me to be generous.
If Patrick Surtain came out week 1 as like this pro-ready corner who was a top 10 pick and just got burned, or looked like rookie year, like unplayable, like he was out there in preseason looking like Ojemudia, that for me would be like an F.
I hope you got my, I hope we can cut that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some of it is, I think for me, it's a letdown of expectations.
See, I almost feel like you have to grade it based off, and it's funny we're having this live on the pod, but off of the draft position more than what your evaluation was.
I think those are one in the, what I'm talking about is like the expectations for that pick, and in part draft evaluation. I think it's part of the picture.
Okay.
I think part of the,
but like if I expected, like, I think evaluation factors in, because like, okay, someone like Paxton Lynch, who was, and obviously he just failed, but like that type of first round pick, you're expecting less out of in year 1 than I don't know, a guy that goes 25 because he has a low ceiling but a high floor. Like, I do think the evaluation comes somewhat into play. Like for me, Montrell Washington, not to get too far ahead of us here, but like Montrell Washington is someone I gave a really high grade to, because my pre-draft evaluation was this guy is just a kick returner and ultimately might be fairly disappointing there.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
But yeah, so for me, C- for Nick Bonitto. And maybe I'll go D+ because he got a couple pressures, but really it was just a non-factor. It wasn't that much worse than my expectation, but somewhere in there, it was if I was a teacher, I'd give it like a 70. Like it was just not like the lowest possible C.
Okay.
Joey, can you remind me what you gave Nick Bonitto last week?
I gave him a C+. Yeah.
So I think that's why I kind of went with a C-. I was going off of kind of like the shift of what happened. It was a letdown from last week. Definitely took a step back. But then when you guys are discussing draft position and then what you're expecting as far as production goes, perhaps it's a little more disappointing. Too bad there's not like a 0.75 grade scale of a D+ to a C- that kind of makes sense here. But I'm going with a C- because I don't think it was any. Did he allow anything that was supremely detrimental to the outcome of that game?
So
his run defense
was really bad, but you can also argue that the Broncos didn't draft him for his run defense.
That's the thing.
That would be the case
But
to make if you're favoring it. Would be like, oh, but he's not. We're the Broncos aren't going to want him to play in this situation.
I'd argue, and like again, I don't even know if you'd call what he got pressures. He got like pocket push a couple times. For
Yeah.
me, the reason I gave it below a C was the run defense was like really bad. I thought it wouldn't maybe quite be that bad. And then also on the pass rushing front, I don't know. It wasn't all that effective even. And he played fairly late into that game. I think he even played into the fourth quarter, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah. And it wasn't like, oh, in the fourth quarter, now he's beating up on backup guys. Like if he's the designated pass rusher or whatever, you'd hope he's able to get some push.
Right. Exactly.
Or pressures. I don't think he got a pressure in that game. I'll have to research that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's where I'm going to get confused, and I think we still need to talk about it, is for the next rookie grade that we're going to throw out there. I don't even think Dulcich suited up at that point. So
this is me just making all the graphics for every rookie in order, but Dulcich didn't even play. So
but I think
for me, it's an NA grade.
And NA, is that appropriate to do so? Even though there's a we've talked about it previously, is that Dulcich not being available to play is a demarcation on George Payton's draft in general. Is there worth a note to that?
I think you could, like, if you really wanted to, I think you could make an argument that right now it's a D because you didn't expect him to be injured. I think there was reason to believe he was going to be a fairly large part of this offense. And now you're looking at a tight end, which is a harder position to transition to the league at. And now you have less time to prepare. I think that speaks to Dulcich probably having a disappointing rookie year, even once he's healthy.
I think NA is appropriate for me. I wouldn't even grade him.
No, I'm there too. I'm just saying I do think it's problematic that he's missed this much time.
Okay.
It's not trending in the right direction.
Right.
That's fair. So we'll hop on over to DAMARRI Mathis. I started with Joey first. Zach, go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, I have a C here. And that's because, again, going back to like my pre-draft evaluation, I thought he was like, and not even so much the evaluation, but where he went. Like we're talking about a 4th round rookie cornerback. And I thought he did fine. I thought he definitely lost some reps. I thought he won some reps. I think the one that'll stand out in everyone's mind is, of course, the touchdown he allowed. But that's just an absurd throw from Josh Allen, and you're asking DAMARRI Mathis to do something fairly unreasonable, hang with Gabe Davis for that amount of time. We were talking about it in the DMs with Frankie. Shout out to Frankie. About, he's lined up with outside leverage that indicates he's expecting some help from the inside, and he never got any. Saying Bassey maybe was supposed to help on that play. It's hard to tell what happened there. But yeah, I just, it wasn't, if I'm grading based on what I had seen in training camp and maybe even the last preseason game, I think it would be a more negative grade because he's raised my expectations off of his initial draft slot. But I'm trying to keep like a consistent metric all season long. So grading it based off his draft slot, I think it was like the type of performance you expect from a 4th round cornerback in their 2nd preseason game.
I gave it a C as well. I think I'm not even going to blame DAMARRI Mathis for that touchdown. I thought that was more of a pass rush issue.
And I wasn't just to be clear, I'm not blaming DAMARRI for that play. I'm just saying, I think that's the one that people will remember as a, Mathis was in coverage as someone scored a touchdown, and we normally see players get dinged for that.
Because that play was from one side of the field completely to the other side of the field. That's impossible. That's impossible. This is the NFL. Receivers are good. You're not going to be able to just do that if you don't have a pass rush. Coverage will get blown without a pass rush. It just is what it is. I don't care how good your corners are. If you can't get a push at all, it's done. It's wraps. So I gave him a C. Other than that, he was, quiet, won some reps, lost some reps. I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
I thought he was better than Ojemudia.
100%.
So that's something there.
As we talked about
yesterday,
Ojemudia
Ojemudia was getting targeted right and left, and that one didn't look good. So I thought DAMARRI Mathis was better than him.
No, I think that, that's an obvious point in a direct line that you can draw there, which is why I went middle of the road C as well. I think that's just the level of play that you saw. There wasn't a huge splash that made a whole lot of difference, but I think that he is performing exactly how you would want him to do so. I did want to move on to our next player here in Uwazurike. Joey, how did you feel about this rookie's performance on Saturday?
So I forgot to look this up right before the pod, but I don't remember exactly how many yards per carry
it was. I wrote it in my article. It was 8 point. Well, it dropped down through 3 quarters, and then the 4th quarter things got a little deceptive where they had like 4 carries for 3 yards or something.
Yeah.
But going into the 3rd quarter, they had 204 yards or 202 yards, something like that, on 24 carries. So they were averaging like 8.7, 8.8 yards per carry.
So
on a good sample size too, 24 carries.
Yeah. And Uwazurike played for like a massive amount of that game, right? So I'm not, it's really hard for me to give any interior defensive lineman any good grade. I don't think he stood out in any way in particular. I don't think there was a flash or like a Uwazurike flash play that I can remember where it was like, ooh, that was awesome. I just remember the Bills getting 9 yards a carry and having series where it was like, oh my gosh, like they could run every single play and they would score a touchdown on here. So with that being said, I think I gave him a D. I gave him a D straight up. I get it. He's a later drafted guy playing in the NFL. It's hard to do that, but I'm not gonna give any defensive lineman a good grade or even a passing grade if that's the type of stuff that's going on.
And I think even looking off of pre-draft expectations, it's a negative grade. I think I'll go a D+, but I'm kind of in lockstep with you. I'll even join you on a D actually. Hello. But I'll join you with a D grade actually.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Edit that one out.
My thing with Uwazurike is, I don't know, they drafted him, and I think it's very clear, even to see how he's being used in practice and everything. Their pre-draft expectation for him was to be a 2-gapping run stuffer, and he hasn't been that through 2 weeks. So I feel good giving him a D grade there.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. I mean, he still has a tendency, his pad level is way too high, and he gets moved because of it.
So problem. If he figures that out, I think he'll be a pretty good player.
Does that shift, if he is able to figure that out, does that shift him to the C average expectation for a rookie there, or does that elevate him? I mean, that seems like a considerable concern.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, but it is a big issue. Like if he fixed it, I'm sure his game would improve massively.
He's a special athlete. Like there aren't many people in the world, not many defensive linemen that are like him. It's like he's kind of that Calais Campbell freak build. And like that's too complimentary because Calais Campbell's such a freak, but he's just like one of those 1 of 1 or like 1 of 3 type of guys. One of the problems with being that big on the interior is making sure you're the low man. He wasn't able to do it at Iowa State. He's still not able to do it. If he's able to figure that out, that kind of technical aspect, he's got the ability to be a really, really fun interior player. It's just, for me, you're drafting a 25-year-old rookie and he still hasn't figured out pad height. I don't feel super confident that. I don't know. That's the downside with drafting older rookies.
Yeah. I think
especially with Matt Campbell as his head coach, like that's a good coaching staff,
right?
Especially defensively.
And hey, where he was drafted, if he turns into a rotational guy, you got to be happy with it.
Is that good return on investment there?
Totally.
You want him to be the Purcell replacement. I think that's or maybe not Purcell because you're doing more looping pass rushing things.
I think that he's more. I think Purcell is that run stopping nose tackle. I think Uwazurike kind of is that guy that you can play there, but you can also
want him
play
more
over
versatile.
Here. He's a lot more. You want him to be able to be in different spots on your defensive line.
But I think if you even get that run stuffing ability out of him, that's a win.
Yeah, but it's hard to say. I don't think he's going to be the run stuffer. Mike Purcell is.
That's fair.
Mike Purcell, when he's on in the run game, he's a really
we were talking about he was best in the league for a couple based on sub metrics for 2 years. So I agree, he's not that, but I just mean like I think they're looking for that type. I think he's a rotational nose that gets used in other ways
Okay, yeah.
moving forward.
Moving onward, and
Or that's the vision. Sorry.
No worries. I was just trying to use that as my segue. Moving onward and upward, we're going over to the secondary. I want to talk about a player who is kind of going head to head, nose to nose with another player on this roster who are really competing for that roster spot and within that positional group. I didn't grade Awazurike though because I had a C- because I don't think I'm as negative as you guys are with the expectations there, but perhaps I'm not looking at the right thing in order to ding him down to that D. I didn't give any rookies a D though, because I haven't seen enough to really warrant this isn't looking good enough.
I'm just doing it week by week. I'm saying this performance for this week was a D.
Oh yeah, no, I think I'm also just in that vein of like, that makes more sense. Now that you've explained it, I got distracted. We're going to move on over to DELARRIN Turner-Yell. Let me click the button here, and I don't remember who went first. So whoever wants to go can go.
Sure. With DTY for me, I think it's been a really disappointing training camp and a really disappointing first preseason game. I think, if I'm grading off of those expectations, maybe it's a B or something, because I think he was like fine today. You saw there was so much pressure put on the safeties to defend the run, and I think that's kind of putting DELARRIN Turner-Yell in a position to succeed, just like fire downhill on the run game. And so I think we saw a better performance from him. That kind of aligns with what I expected out of him coming out of the draft. So I'm giving him a C. But like, if we're grading the body of work, I think it's a D, D-. I think it's the worst grade of any of the rookies. If I'm betting money right now, I don't think he makes the final roster. And you're looking at the Broncos, they had 3 5th-round picks. He was the highest one. So burning that pick is painful.
I gave him a higher. So what did you give him?
C.
A C. I gave him a B- for this game. I thought I saw a special teams tackle, which got me happy, just because if he's going to make the team, he's going to have to be able to do stuff like that, right? That like those small things are a big deal to what round was he? 5th round?
5th round, yep.
Yeah. Those little tackles on special teams, that's a big deal to a 5th rounder. It really is. If you can consistently do that, it's like, oh, that's awesome. He also had a tackle in the flat that I think forced a 4th down, if I remember correctly, which was awesome. Love to see that. And then, I thought that he was extremely quiet last game, and I hadn't heard his name at all in training camp. My expectations were low coming in, and he played better than my expectations. So I give him a B-.
I like that we're doing it differently, because I think you have more of a almost like where the player's stock is at.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
And mine is more, or like what their movement was after this game based on what the expectations were. And I'm doing more based on where they were originally drafted, what we thought back in April. How are they holding up to it?
Yeah.
It's good to have both those sides.
Very interesting. It's almost like we need a middle of the road week to week. I think last week,
that's your spot, Bree.
Still not a lot of right in the middle, just like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. The porridge is just right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to create an analogy there. I didn't know how to grade out this, because now I feel like I'm being the hard ass over here as I'm putting DTY as a C, just because I'm not seeing any big splashes out of him and I'm not hearing a whole lot, but I don't know how that holds up as far as what the expectations were. So if you feel like he's doing well enough this week, this past game, to warrant him a B, I mean, that's just interesting to me.
Yeah, it was a B-. It was close to a C+, but it was just because I didn't expect anything coming out of college. He came into camp, he didn't really do anything, and then last game he didn't do anything. So in this game, he had plays. Mm-hmm. He had the special teams tackle, he had multiple tackles, and then he made a big play. One of our only stops, I think, was DTY. If it was our only stop, I remember correctly. So it was like he played much higher than my expectations.
And you did already mention that it was a little quiet out of the off season during training camp. So anything last words on DTY? Mm-hmm. Awesome. We're going to skip on over to the other side of the ball and head over to a fan favorite in Montreal, Washington. Joey, how did you feel about Washington's performance this week?
I was happy with Washington. Again, the guy is a monster kick return or punt returner, kick returner, just returner. He had a really good return. He continues to do that. Zach has some good tweets about the averages and how he's exceeding where he should be. Obviously, very small sample size, but if it were to continue, it's like, oh, we're looking at a really, really good returner here. So that's awesome. And then I was really impressed early in the game. It was the first drive of the game. Josh Johnson seeing a blitz straight in his face, fires at the Montreal Washington, who is in man-to-man coverage, able to beat his guy across the middle. And it was an actual NFL catch, right? Like it wasn't just like sit down in his zone, catch the ball, fall down. It was like, I'm in your face. I'm actually covering you. You have to come up with this ball. And he did it. It was a good catch. Brought it. It was a third down conversion too, if I remember correctly. So
a third and long conversion.
Yeah.
And across the middle, it was a contested catch against a Bills safety tandem that is one of the best safety tandems in the league. Firing downhill on him. I forget which one it was, if it was Hyde or Poyer, but it was between two Bills players. And I think the whole thing with Montreal Washington was like, can he be a real receiver? Going back to going off of draft expectations, it was like, maybe he's going to be a really good returner. That's what they're hoping he'll be. And then if he's anything on offense, that's gravy. And the fact you see him going against a starting Buffalo defense that I think was #1 in the NFL last year, has one of the best safety tandems, a really good secondary, and he's making a contested catch for a crucial third down. At that moment, it was crucial. I think, that's why I gave him a B.
You give him a B. So yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That was kind of my mind frame of him coming in, was like, it sounds like they want him to be the returner. I didn't know if he was going to be able to come in and they were going to use him as a receiver. Really, they were like, really try to find a niche for him. And it looks like that's what they're trying to do. It's just a play like we had Deontay Spencer last year. It's a play that I don't think he would have came up with.
0% chance.
So it's like he's offering more than just a return ace.
Yeah, you're seeing the flashes of it, and it's only one rep, but I think it was a very, very meaningful single rep.
Yeah.
As much, and like there's always a limit on that because it's one rep, but as meaningful as one single rep can be, I think it was pretty close to that.
Right.
You also saw them designing plays for him. He had that like smoke screen, I think it was, that was a designed touch for him. So I think, again, seeing that against the first team defense is very promising for how the coaching staff wants to use him.
And that's 2 weeks in a row. We saw design touches for him. So it's like they're trying to find a niche for Montreal Washington to serve if he were to come into the game. Like, we know what we want him to do. He's going to be an open field player. And then also just, I guess, try to catch the ball over the middle and stuff like that. That's a big deal.
Right now, it's not far-fetched that he's the best rookie on this team, and that's a massive overperformance of draft expectation.
Damn.
Does that I mean, that obviously further cements him as a lock for the 53-man roster.
100%.
Yeah, he's a lock. Lock it in.
Put it in stone. Go ahead and etch it away. Click at your chisels with your hammers and lock that pick in for Montreal Washington. I give him a B+. I'm super enthused. I think watching him throughout training camp, and I think a lot of people were hesitant to throw too much into the hype of it all, but it just keeps spelling itself out. And you see now through 2 preseason games, can't wait to see what he does next weekend. So we will move on to Luke Wattenberg. Zach, go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, I was a Wattenberg hater. So if I'm doing like my own pre-draft evaluation, I think he's really outperforming that based on like where the Broncos drafted him, kind of at the back end of the 5th round. I think it's like a C+. I think he's looking like he can be one of the rotational pieces on the back end of that offensive line and someone who makes the final 53. And I wasn't really expecting him to make the final 53 just a few weeks ago. I think he's shown some center guard versatility. I know based on like where they drafted him, they were probably expecting him to make it, but I think it was awkward with Graham Glasgow and some of the bodies they already added to that offensive line. With the numbers game, it would have been difficult, but seeing him already outperform Graham Glasgow, or maybe not. I think in the team's eyes, outperform Graham Glasgow, kind of make that Glasgow roster spot expendable. I was just really impressed with or maybe not really impressed with Wattenberg, but I think he's outperforming expectations, and I think he'll be a depth piece for this team, and I didn't quite expect that. So C+ for me.
I have a question for you before I give my grade. Do you think he would make the roster in good depthy interior offensive lineman team?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think he could be the last guy. But I will say, and the Broncos are missing a few of their depth pieces. You look at Moody, was a guy who's definitely making the roster as a depth piece. Tom Compton, of course, still missing. if you add Billy Turner to that line, he's probably not a depth piece, but he's making one of those starters a depth piece. So I think in that world, he's like the worst member of the depth, and that's fine. I think right now, as it stands, he's been one of the best members of that second unit offensive line because they've just been that bad. And so maybe that's giving me a more favorable grade in my eyes, but I don't know. I didn't expect him to be like the best offensive lineman on the second unit. So that's worth something to me.
Well, I have two questions there. The first being, how does that kind of knee-ish injury affect maybe how he's performing? I know he had a little bit of an injury to his knee. Is that correct?
I missed that if that's the case.
I think it was last week, but I perhaps maybe led to that. But
it looked good to me in the Buffalo game if that was the case.
Good. So that's good to know that that wasn't leading anything in that. Do you think that Wattenberg is one of the more impressive rookies of this class?
No, I think he's better than draft expectation, but like,
Got it.
I don't know. He's been fine. I wouldn't
Like
be
a solid C.
I wouldn't be shoveling coal into the Luke Wattenberg hype train.
Okay.
But like, I think, I don't know. He hasn't been bad. I was expecting him to be like the George Payton. What were you thinking here? Pick. And instead, I think that's DELARRIN Turner. Yeah.
Okay. I also gave Luke Wattenberg a C. I don't think he's blown anything up where it's been like, Luke Wattenberg, what the heck are you doing? But I don't think he's done anything where it's like, hey, like, this guy's a real player. You know what I mean? I give him a very average grade there. I don't think that he deserves anything higher. I don't think the guy deserves anything lower. He's just been kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, that's my take on that.
An or a meh, depending on how you look at it.
Look at my notes.
No, he really did write it out, folks. It is EH period. No, I appreciate that. We'll go ahead and move on to the next in Matt Henningsen. Joey, start us off.
This one's like my Wazarike. Anytime a team runs 9 yards of carry on you 24 times for 200 plus yards, I'm not going to give my interior defensive line or my linebackers a very good grade. So I gave Matt Henningsen a D.
I think we hit on it with the Wazarike thing. It's a D for me.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think you can't validate it. You can't validate a good grade there. So that's kind of my take. And I guess I will also note, guys, that these guys won't be playing. Like, let's say the injuries happen, and for whatever reason, Matt Henningsen or Wazarike enters a role. He's a role player, right? I don't think that he is going to look as bad as he did, or Wazarike would look as bad as they did, just because they would be playing with other good players. But
you could hide him more.
You can hide him more, and also, like, it's a really noticeable when your entire interior defensive line is just getting blown up. Like, other players could help. Like, it's the ultimate team sport. But yeah, I'm not giving anyone on the interior defensive line a good grade.
You're just fed up with it. Do you think they're not taking advantage of the opportunities being presented to themselves, even though they may be progressing okay during the offseason or during training camp, as Hackett has pointed out previously about his rookies? Or was he just being overtly positive?
I don't think that's the case. I just don't think that either of these guys are ready for like a role.
I don't think there's that much to read into it. I think it's just the defensive line's not great. They got bullied. They don't deserve a good grade.
Yeah, and they just don't. And it's not even like, guys, these guys aren't ever going to turn out to be good. That's not even what I'm saying. I'm thinking that these guys just aren't ready now. They're not ready. If the injuries happened and Matt Henningsen or Wazarike had to go in there, you're not feeling good about that yet. Down the road, that could change.
All right, fair. I'm going to pop on over to the next, and that's FAION HICKS. I do want to point out there was a play against the Bills. I think it was in the fourth quarter. HICKS had come in. I don't know if he was prepared or possibly ready for the ball that was about to be thrown at him, but he was outside of the area code on that one, a good 4 yards out, jumping to try to,
Raheem Moore-esque.
It very much so was, and I was kind of shocked at how terribly off he was on that ball. To me, that a bad splash play kind of brings down your grade, because it's like a Trey Quinn muffed punt where you're like, you have to, or a fumble at that point, but you just kind of have to like cringe at it and say, it wasn't good for his performance. I didn't grade him lower because of that, but I just like averagely see that C minus though. I mean, it was an ugly play.
Yeah, I gave him who I kind of want to change it now. I'm not sure. I think I'm gonna go with. I don't know. I gave him a D last week. I think that I'm going to give him a D again. That's my thing. I don't think he's improved at all from the last game. I thought it was bad. He gave up a free play, a touchdown. It didn't have any notably great plays, I didn't think. And I'll say the same thing I did last week. For a guy drafted as low as he is, you're going to have to come in and make plays. It's not going to be given to you. You know what I mean? Like Nick Bonitto could come out here and get a D plus, and his job is secure. He doesn't have to worry about it. FAION Hicks isn't that way. You need to make plays in the preseason. He's going to have to, and he didn't. So I'm going to give him a D.
Yeah, I think you laid out a good case. If I was grading based off of what we've seen in training camp, I think it's an even lower grade because I think you have seen some of those moments in training camp where it was like, there was a good week or two where it was like, man, maybe FAION Hicks can push Isang Bassi. But it's just, I don't know. It's gone downhill. It hasn't been good in the preseason games. I think it's a D for me.
All right. I'm going to jump to possibly the next two players. The last two players are going to be some of the hardest discussions that we're going to have just from, one is obviously a standout player and the other one's going to be fighting for a spot on this roster. We'll start first with Brandon Johnson. Zach, take it away. What'd you grade Johnson at?
Yeah, I think it was a kind of pedestrian day for him. But again, based off pre-draft expectations, I'm giving him a B minus because you're seeing him run with that first team offense. And I think of those guys that were out there with the first team offense, Kendall Hinton, Montrell Washington, Brandon Johnson, it might end up being Brandon Johnson who has the biggest role in the offense this year. Montrell probably has the biggest role on the team. But it'd be right there. Like, I don't think he's far off of Kendall Hinton at all right now. I think he might even be like a tiny hair ahead of him in the coach's eyes based on just what I've seen. I think, he didn't see as many looks this game. I think he just had the one reception. But, it was a nice play. And just, I think seeing in the same way we talked about Montrell Washington, seeing those designed touches boost his grade a little because it says something about him that we didn't expect to be said about him. I think the fact that the coaches are using Brandon Johnson as one of those top receivers warrants a good grade. And I don't know, he played fine. So B minus for me. Maybe that's inflated. Maybe it should be a C plus, but I'm the Brandon Johnson stan. So B minus.
Well, I gave him a C plus. That's interesting that you say that only because it was that one play and it kind of wasn't anything to the scope of what we saw last week. So I thought maybe there was a little bit of a decline there, but I don't think it was necessarily his fault. He didn't make those mistakes. So
yeah, I gave him a C plus as well, Bray. I thought that he deserves a bump because he was running with a group that I did not expect him to be running with at all come this time of year, but he is. So he deserves a bump. Now, it's hard for me to give him anything higher because we didn't see any production.
And I will say, so many people are talking about, watch Seth Williams and he might be a roster guy because of the size he brings to the roster. Brandon Johnson 6'3". Like he's a bigger receiver. Again, his RAS profile isn't great, but I think he helps bring some size to a receiver room that's really lacking it after Patrick's injury.
Yeah. I think for all these guys, and Zan said this on Twitter in my comments, and if you guys don't follow him, I don't have his exact app, but he's phenomenal.
Zan B21. Really knowledgeable dude.
I love his tweets. I love it when he hops in my comments and says something. He always is like, great. It's always something I can take away from. And he made a really good point about how at the end of the day, a big thing for these receivers in this specific scheme, and Robbie also pointed this out as well, is their blocking, which adds to that height thing, I think, size does. Like there's smaller guys that are good effort blockers, but they're always going to be at a disadvantage.
And you need a power slot. Greg Dulcich hasn't been practicing. You've lost Tim Patrick for the season, of course. KJ Hamler's not doing that stuff for you. Kendall Hinton, I don't think, is doing that stuff for you. We've seen a lot of Brandon Johnson with that unit. I wouldn't be surprised if they're pegging him to help fill some of that void. I think it's going to be an amalgamation of players, and I wouldn't be surprised if on some of those early downs, it's Brandon Johnson for what he can bring as a blocker. And considering the amount of polish he's shown in his game.
Right.
Yeah, I think we should hit the very last one on this list, and that is Jalen Virgil, who I, kind of picked out as my riser yesterday on the show. As just the plays that he made, although there weren't a ton of them, I just think that he made a solid case for being one of those potential last or top 7 wide receivers for the Denver Broncos. I think he did well. I think I gave him a B minus. Let me check my notes real quick. Oh, I gave him a C plus because he was splashy. I think maybe splashy is why he stuck out to me. Zach, how did you grade Jalen Virgil?
For me, it's a B plus. And I know like the hot debate this week has been like what wide receivers are making the roster. For me, Jalen Virgil has to be one of them. Like just has to. I'm not listening to the bubble thing with him. I'm way more interested in like bubble for Tyree Cleveland or Seth Williams or one of those guys. If you carry 6, Virgil should be one of the 6. He fits your quarterback so well. When you look at Russell Wilson's strengths, he fits it so well. He also, with some of KJ Hamler's health concerns, adds a vertical speed threat that you might really need this year. He's even more deadly in that regard than Montrell Washington. So that's something to watch 100%.
You can back that up with the 32-yard return that he had as well. I think he showed a tremendous burst of speed.
100%. And I think that's a different skill. But yes, he did show
just referencing the speed. Yeah.
100%. And those 30-yard returns, he had 2 30-yard returns. I was tweeting out where Montrell Washington would rank. Joey was talking about that earlier. He'd be like 9th in terms of kickoff average last year, 2nd in terms of punt return average. Jalen Virgil at like 30 yards a kick return, I think would be 5th or something like that. Yeah. It was he and both times were exactly 30 yards. It wasn't like he had one crazy outlier. So yeah, he has that special teams ability. Him and Brandon Johnson have also been terrific gunners all camp long during special teams periods. So I think they add that special teams ability, both offensive special teams and defensive special teams. And then he's a valuable receiver that just fits the offense so well. He and Brandon Johnson, if I was the GM, they'd be roster locks for me. And I'd be looking at other guys as my bubble players.
Absolutely. Joey, you tweeted out the other day, rank the B+. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut.
No, you're fine. I forgot. And then I cut you off.
Well, I appreciate it. Keeps me on my toes. Joe, you tweeted out, rank the following players: Brandon Johnson, Seth Williams, Tyree Cleveland, Jalen Virgil. What did you learn from that tweet?
That everybody's list is completely different and there's no consensus whatsoever. That's my big takeaway. There was none. There was a lot of people, and it's interesting. I always struggle with wide receivers, and I was actually DMing Zach about this today because it feels like all of them can win in so many different ways. Like there's not just like a singular trait you're looking for. There's a plethora of different traits you're looking for at the wide receiver position. That was my biggest takeaway is I think people just value different traits in their receivers.
And to that point, get receivers that fit the way your quarterback wins. Like there are some quarterbacks like Ryan Tannehill who throws an awesome in-breaking route. So like pairing him with AJ Brown is a really, really nice pairing. On the other side of that, like the Jalen Virgils of the world, I think are awesome fits for Russell Wilson and the way Russell Wilson wants to attack.
Sure. Yeah, I gave Jalen Virgil a B+ too. My biggest thing was, while it wasn't like a better game than last time, what really did it for me was that he won in a completely different type of way. I loved seeing that. He didn't just win straight running down the field and winning deep. He won off a broken play. He won over the middle. Like it was just good things to see where it's like, oh, it's not just a one-trick pony. And I liked it.
I feel bad now about my C+ because I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote it down, considering he was my, player of the game. So I'm going to go to a B. I'm not going to go B+ just because I'm not really sure what constitutes that when you don't get that level of reps. Like if you're not making those plays, but they were splashy. His name stood out, and that's why I immediately tacked that on yesterday. So great stuff, guys. Did you have any other additional notes on the rookies before we end the show today?
I have a quiz question for you guys.
Oh my goodness. Is it time for Joey's question of the day?
Yeah, this is a new segment we're doing where I'm going to be asking a just random quiz question. It could be at any part in the show. I just decided to do it for right now. So are you guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Terrell Davis has the most yards in a single season. He's first and second, right? He has 2 seasons. He's 1 and 2. Who's at 3?
Third most rushing yards in a single season
for the Broncos.
The Broncos leading rushers.
Yeah.
which
Man.
Melvin Gordon doesn't actually need that many to break the top 10. I know that's stupid.
That's
Not all
trivia
time,
question.
single season.
Yeah, this is single season.
Oh man, I feel like I know it. Man, we need to make sure there's not dead air.
These be your favorite Broncos analysis, by the way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Man, people listening don't know this. Okay, I think I have my answer.
Okay,
I
who
think
is
I have
it?
my answer. Well, shouldn't I wait for Bree to finalize hers?
Yeah.
I'm drawing a big old goose egg.
All right. Well, I'm gonna
really
get
mad
mine in,
about
and
it.
Bree can't guess mine.
No,
I'm saying those are the rules.
No, I'm watching
You're
it. Go
giving
ahead.
up.
I
You're
am.
just throwing in the towel.
No, just
I've had a
throw
long-
You got to throw out a
random
name.
name.
Throw out a
Random
running
back
back.
name. Melvin
Like-
Gordon.
but yeah, Melvin Gordon.
Okay, Melvin
Wrong.
Gordon.
Clinton Portis.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct. Clinton Portis, and it was like
Let's
1,500
go.
yards, which is really
Go.
impressive.
I wasn't even watching
Then traded
Broncos
to-
games back then.
You were a freaking toddler.
Yeah, just about. Just about.
So yep, that's the winner, and that's going to be every week.
Yeah,
That's a really
Joey's
great-
trivia
episode.
question of the day.
I cannot wait to just be lambasted with trivia questions when it is my literal least favorite thing to do in this world.
She's
Really
just gonna throw in the
appreciate-
towel every time. The game is me making a guess and then trying to twist Bree's arm into saying any name.
and I'm just gonna be like, I don't know, because I don't know anything.
Right.
Fantastic show, guys. Really appreciate you breaking down the rookies today. Awesome guest, Zach. You were correct. You're right. As per usual. I'm just sad Joey couldn't guess. So maybe
It
eventually
means I
we'll
win
have to.
Bree's car.
You can have Priscilla.
No,
She is now yours.
Zach and Bree aren't allowed to ask Joey's questions of the day. I'm sorry, it's going to be me every single time.
Those are the rules. We'll just
They're
have to figure
Joey's
out something.
questions.
They are Joey's questions. Joey's question of the day, trademarked. It's been a fantastic episode. Thanks for hanging in there with us. We'll be back on Wednesday with another episode of Let's Talk Broncos, brought to you by Mile High Sports, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Joey, Zach, tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, everyone go give me a follow at JR Drafts, Fun Writing Mile High Sports.
Yeah. Writing Mile High Sports, Twitter at Zach_Seegers. Tons of work for you there every single day.
I have a thing. I want to shout out Bailey Bassett, who I saw at the bar the other day and said he listened to the podcast.
That's so
hello.
crazy.
Shout out, Bailey.
Because of your vouch, I went ahead and followed Bailey back. So you're welcome, Bailey. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Let's go Broncos, and let's